I had existential dread surrounding birthdays. The day I turned 15, I spent most of it working, rearranging my room, working on future videos, which I had been working on every day soon after turning 14, to the point of isolating myself completely in my room, only being awake at night and asleep during the day, with few days to spare outside for the duration of that year. I could not even consume a piece of media without it having to be tied to work in some way, either in influencing a point, however small, I would make in my next vlog, or inspiring something that goes into the process. As long as I believed whatever I was doing was in some way related to the larger goal, I would permit myself to do it, but the guilt plagued everything I did. That was not related to the goal in a more direct sense. I had to do things fast. Back to being 15 for a moment, I recorded a video on that day saying how proud I was of my work ethic. In my head, I was saying the day after, oh my god, there's only 3 years left for me to become good at this. Partly, this level of obsessiveness was pragmatic. I had been terrified of becoming homeless since I was at least 9 years old, because up to that point, I put little to no work into my homeschooling, opting to cheat, with my parents' assumption being that I was trekking along like every other good student of which I had no frame of reference for. The only thing I found certainty in was that I was not one of those students, whatever they were. I was never smart, but the more I was told I was, the more pressure I felt to be smart, and in order to perform smartness, I could not ask for help. If I could not ask for help, I had to cheat. And the longer I cheated, the further I was away from everyone else's progress. All the while, my parents continually reinforced the idea that if I do not get an education, I won't get a job. If I don't get a job, I starve. It was not hard for me to connect the dots to know where I was ending up, if I continued on the path I was on. But by 9, I had been cheating for 2 years. I was not about to get the physical punishment I got for things much smaller. I stayed quiet. The problem only got worse. Fast forward to 2013, as someone born in 2002, I seem to have misrepresented some of the dates on this timeline in my other videos. 2014 was close. In fact, I entered education in January of that year. I spent all of 2013 on extended break, as my parents had become so frustrated with my behavior at home that I was declared unteachable. They were ready to let me be the public school system's problem. I was 11 years old in 2013, I turned 12 in April of 2014. I was over 11 and a half when I entered public schooling. Why did I get these numbers wrong so many times? I honestly have no idea. Maybe I said it in a video once and ran with it like it was true? Maybe this explains why I get so confused every time I bring dates and numbers in regards to my schooling timeline in videos. I have never been good with dates nor numbers. They fundamentally confuse me like nothing else. Anyway, I was 11 and I had no idea what I was doing. My parents knew I was behind, and that's why I ended up in 5th grade instead of 6th grade. I don't think they knew just how behind I was. I entered the math classroom after the initial testing to enroll, trying desperately to hide my profuse shaking in both instances, and was immediately struck by the problems on the board. It was as if I had been teleported into a foreign country on another planet with a language so disconnected from anything I had seen up to that point that my only response to the immense confusion was to scream. Internally. I screamed internally. They put me in the classes for dumber people, and I made it through that year passing. I got addicted to accelerated math, of all things, and almost got to go on a field trip because of how much of it I did in just about every inch of free time we got, even lunch. One kid tacitly shamed me during the morning when we got 30 minutes to ourselves for always wanting to do AM. I didn't care. 6th grade was a breeze academically. I made A's and B's thanks to my school going all the way back to the beginning with math and language arts, and having a science teacher who essentially let us not work. Then there was history. It was the only class I was so confident in I could make jokes the whole way through to the tune of everyone's laughter, including the teachers, whom I had often interrupted with it. It became so much of a meme that my hand shot up with the correct answer to every question that by the end of the year I was told I would haunt the class forever. Nowhere else in the world did I talk so much, or at all for that matter. At least when I was in that class, people liked me. Someone was proud of me. Can you imagine how much that meant to a homeschooler who got hit by their parents at age 5 and onward for simply wanting to talk to her family, with a justification for the physical punishment being that she was being a boring child? 7th grade was a different story. I already forgot everything I learned over summer break. For the people around me, those classes were to reinforce stuff they had already learned and relearned their entire lives. For me, it was learning everything for the first time after desperately trying to catch up enough to function in the lower classes in 5th grade. I was taking shots in the dark, and my grades reflected it. Back was the sense that I was dealing with another planet's foreign language, and so too was my screaming, only worsening the depression, anger, and suicidal ideation that had plagued the entirety of my time in public school up to that point, having been bullied constantly for my slim physique, something out of my control as there was little food at home, long hair, and feminine demeanor. I had enough. I went from being the mild-mannered, quiet kid to being the one who ain't done nothing to nobody, meaning I developed a reputation for lying directly to the principal as much as I could to weasel my way out of the consequences for whatever fights I got into after the bullying accelerated. My history teacher got wind of me being in school suspension and ran after me as I was leaving the lunchroom with my breakfast to take into class. He asked me with a sense of sincerity and concern for my well-being in his voice and on his face I had never seen in a person before. I provided replies of only a few words as I quickly made my way to the door, looking straight ahead and down. I wanted out. 8th grade, 2016 to 2017. I was 14, I should have been 15, whatever. This year, my parents thought school no longer held the capacity for me to be their problem, thus, I was back to being my parents' problem, with the caveat being that their version of me being their problem was actually just me doing online school, that had no way of being monitored. At least not with my father's growing apathy in the face of their on and off relationship. He took more and more time living away from home, with most of 2016 being a year I barely saw him, and my mother's complete and utter ineptitude for computers. She didn't even know how to copy and paste. I was free. Before August hit with the beginning of the new homeschool cycle, I had discovered a strange anime YouTuber at the tail end of, if memory serves me right, May. I had never been so infatuated with one person. I had never had so much content to consume that spoke to all of the proclivities I met content with, but had unfulfilled. Watch any of the home movies I made as a kid, and you'll know exactly the kind of rawness and mundanity she was speaking to. Nor had content spoken to so many things I did not yet know I wanted but longed for forever. My passion for creating videos was reignited. I had a future career. I didn't have to be afraid of being homeless anymore, at least not if I worked hard enough to see myself as someone capable of having a career in the field. That was the hard part. You see, essentially everything I made reflected on me. And if I'm a failure, someone actively losing at life, a bad person, a boring child, etc., who makes something and that thing is bad, it's probably because of those reasons. That's how I saw things. It's why I shut Audacity, shouted in anger at myself each time I said or meandered a point. It's why I self-harmed whenever I made something bad. It was only because of Digi sharing her blog posts from 2007 that I could find confidence in that I wrote significantly better at an earlier age. If someone as smart as this, who's affected me as much as this, can start out that bad and improve through years of practice, surely I can too. From there on, it was a matter of constantly reinforcing this idea. Doubt hit me at every turn, and when you think of yourself in that way for so long, it is incredibly difficult to replace those internalized feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness with new ones. But I knew logically those feelings were wrong, so no matter how much they tormented me, I kept practicing. In the end, Digi was right, and I stopped hurting myself. Wow, young Lily Star, a story of self-betterment? Yeah, that's great and everything, but how did we get here? Oh yeah, time. August 2017, ninth grade. January 2018, no more ninth grade. It was around this time that I discovered disability for mentally ill people existed by reading the Hikikomori 8chan board. I had already abandoned the career-oriented approach I took to practicing my writing and YouTube throughout 2016 and 2017. My heart wasn't there. I made things purely out of enjoyment at this point. So the prospect of YouTube saving my hide and inevitable homelessness was ever more elusive. But if I could gather a large enough body of evidence to support the case that I was disabled, I could be free to do what I enjoyed, exactly what I wanted to be doing all along. No more fear. At least, not of that kind. In 2019, I released the video reflecting on turning 17 and the death of Infinite Outlaw, asserting that I had a year left to become smart before I'm 18 and no longer am taken as something special for the few abilities I have. The child yearning to impress their parents that just called them boring came out again, the entirety of her self-worth tied to what accomplishments she can make. And that's where a lot of my videos come from. This desperate sense that my time is running out, either because of impending homelessness or the impending rejection I would receive as a result of no longer being perceived as smart by 18 and therefore having no value as a human being. The more I think about that, the less I relate to my content, the less I am like the person with those motivations, the less my content gets produced. I'm not going to force myself to read things I don't like just because they will make me sound smarter to other people. I'm not going to make content just because other people will react well to it. Without those motivations, I'm left with what I enjoy, which looks a lot different than what I've been doing. I'm not the person who started this journey as a cure for self-hatred. I'm not even the person who started this journey to be better understood by others. I have friends for that, and even if I were, I've gotten the understanding I want on everything I ever wanted to talk about. I've changed.